Well, good morning everyone, and welcome to this, our public meeting. This meeting this morning is to inform our parishioners and the wider community about the breach that has occurred on the Grand Western Canal at the Swing Embankment, and that was on the 21st of November. To thank those who worked tirelessly to bring the emergency to a conclusion and thus avoiding the disaster. And also to thank the many who supported those at work and those who offered help and sent good wishes to those involved in the operation. We, the Halberton Parish Council, have called this meeting to let you know about where we are regarding the reinstatement of the Canal Bank. We have many individuals here this morning that have helped to contain and manage the emergency to minimise its effect on the environment and the public purse. Devon County engineers are here. They hopefully will be able to tell us something about how they intend to reconstruct the bank. We have a member of a director of the Met Office who will tell us just a little about how climate change is affecting the weather patterns and how we need to plan ahead to avoid future emergencies. We will be informed about the fish rescue that is taking place next week. We've also informed about the diversion set up to link the canal towpath. Friends of the Canal Group are here to tell us about the Just Giving website where you can donate money. So empty your pockets out later on. And we hope that many of you will be able to come along to our safe viewing area and see the devastation for yourselves later. So, over to the running order this morning. The first item is for me. Well, I think perhaps, no, we won't run through the names because it will get a bit complicated. I'm Ken Browse, Chairman of the local parish council, and I'd like to thank all the workers, the rangers, line managers, agencies, drink and soup providers, the Village Hall Committee, fellow parish councillors, parishioners, Devon County Council, Mid-Devon Councillor, contractors and their staff who worked into the night and early morning. Special thanks to Mason Kings, the John Deere agents, for supplying us with a massive tractor, and not forgetting the television, radio and press, both local and national, for the coverage of this emergency. A special thanks to John, Barbara and Stephen Browse for having this ordeal imposed upon them, for their willingness to let all and sundry onto their farmland to carry out work necessary, and commiserations as to the state of their land is in and the clean-up operation that will take a considerable time to complete. The field that is now best described as a slice of toast covered in chocolate, spread as a thick mud coating of about 3 inches deep over the area, and this is the area that was flooded. This field is an arterial route to other fields on the farm, and plans will need to be put in place quite quickly to allow John, Stephen to carry on with their farming activities. Interestingly, as far as I'm aware, we've not had a word from our district council officers, even in the evacuation process. I'll ask that question, but I haven't seen anyone. I showed our local MP Neil Parish around the field last Friday, and I understand he's on his way here this morning.
Here I am.
Oh, sorry. I was up in London on Wednesday and met Eric Pickles, the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government. I handed him a copy of the Tiverton Gazette and a copy of the now famous video shot by our friend Neil Babbage from Post Hill. And we hope that when allocating funds he will be generous to us. He said a few things on Wednesday which were something that was really appreciative, and one thing he said which I didn't quite know, and I thought perhaps we ought to turn it around the other way. The things he said positive were that the parish councils are localism's magic wand, and I just wish we could have waved it a bit harder last Tuesday, and that we're hardwired to every community. And then he went on to say something about showing gumption. Well, I think if he understood how frustrated some of us parish councillors are in delivering the localism agenda, I think perhaps he needed to think a bit clearer about what he was saying there. So we're here now, and thank you all for turning up. And next on the list is there anyone here from the from the police headquarters? If they had resource, they would, but if not, they couldn't. So no one from the police. The fire brigade? No, not yet. So that leads me next to hand over to our County Councillor, Des Hammond. Thank you, Des.
Came a bit quicker than I was expecting. Thank you, first of all, Ken, and thank you for setting this up. I think the fact that we have this going on really gives a very good idea of what kind of community Halberton is, because this is not an accident that happened to the community, it happened in the community. And the community is part of the solution to this problem, not just a sort of a hopeless victim. If you were going to have something terrible happen on this kind of scale, I hate to say it to you all, but I'd rather it happened in Halberton than anywhere else, because we as a community are more capable of helping ourselves than most. And I suppose the first thing I'd just say is sort of my direct experience of what happened. I was doing my emails, as you usually do, early of an afternoon on the Wednesday, and noticed the little light blinking on the top of my voicemail, and checked it and found that there were people on there shouting about something very bad happening at the canal. So I was down here in about 10 minutes, onto the embankment, and found that all the people who were doing the hard work were actually away from the embankment, desperately trying to make sure that the water was not being fed in, blocking the flow of water. And I've never seen the canal doing what it was doing that day. It was like two substantial rivers running towards a central point, and then there was this biblical deluge of water flooding down and creating an enormous lake in the fields out the back on John Rouse's land. And that was all very exciting and very terrible for the canal. But what I saw when I arrived, I suppose, was the next stage, because everyone had been working to stop the flow of water into this breach and to stop the whole embankment being flooded through and starting to fall down. What I saw was people very close to the edge where it was falling down. What I saw was people able to get onto that embankment still while it was doing it, and people still living below it where it might have slipped away. I have memories, I don't know if anybody else does, of news reports from Aberfan in the past, and it's not the kind of thing that you forget. And I also knew that there were vehicles going past on the road down below. So what I did was, I wasn't the first, but what I did was I got on the phone to the 999 services and I persuaded them, and it took a certain amount of persuasion on that particular day, that the fact that our canal was flooding into a field was actually an emergency. Because you think back to that Wednesday, there were disasters and emergencies happening all over the county. There were car accidents all over the place. There were people floating away. There were houses being flooded. And the emergency services, not unreasonably, found it very hard to understand why a leaky canal was an emergency. And I had to try and explain, using the most colourful language possible, that 1-ton blocks of earth were sliding away into this abyss and people were standing on top of it. And for me, the one thing out of all of this that is the biggest godsend, literally, is that no one was killed and no one was injured. Because make no mistake, if you saw the power of the water on that day, and this may be why the videos of this have gone viral, the power of the water on that day was ready to take people's lives. And we can be very thankful to Ken, to the whole canal team who were plugging the water supply, because cutting off that water supply was crucial to stopping the danger. But also to the emergency services, the police and the fire, who are all protecting us somewhere else today, but to thank them for coming and keeping everybody safe. On the subject of this community helping itself, I also want to pay huge tribute to local people. Ken and his family, extended family, I see Peter Graham down there. I mean, there are a lot of familiar faces. I mean, I'm not going to name everybody, but there are a lot of people, a lot of farmers in particular, who have the kit and have the experience, and who were in the water, around the water, swinging loads of clay, in the driving rain, in the middle of the night, in the dark, and taking some pretty serious risks to put a stop to what was a very dangerous situation. So this wasn't just people who were being paid to deal with our emergency. This was people who cared enough about it to do it voluntarily. And I know this sounds a little bit cheesy, but I would very much appreciate if the people here from our community and from the canal would show their appreciation to people from this community who actually went out there on the night and got stuck in. And Ken, that's for you as much as for anybody. I also want to pay huge tribute to the whole Canal team, and to Mark Baker in particular. That was a terrifying day. That was way beyond anybody's normal job description. I mean, there's a picture on this rotation behind me showing a picture of Craig literally up to his neck in the canal while the water is flooding around him in a dry suit. Some risks were taken and some people showed commitment way beyond what they were expected to do in the circumstances, and they deserve our applause as well, and I'd like to hear that too. The last thing from me, this is a beginning rather than an end. It's a massive opportunity. Our canal is, well, before this, was in a better condition than it had been in 198 years. It's the 200th anniversary in 2 years' time. We don't want to see that canal with a big breach in the middle of it in 2 years' time. So at the end of this, there will be a call to action. It's going to be the County Council's job in the end to see this fixed. They'll do the heavy lifting on the money, I have no doubt, and I have great faith that they'll do the right thing. But I think we also need, as a community and a broader group of people who are interested in this canal, to show our willing. And we will be setting up a large fundraising campaign now, so that it's not just the taxpayer who helps put this back, it's everyone who has an interest in the canal. And we'll be doing that at the end. So in the meantime, be thankful that everyone is alive and well, and know that we will all be able to take some part in fixing it at the end.
Thank you, Des, because I think we saw it as an emergency, but it didn't turn into a disaster, thankfully. And now I'd like to hand over to Nick, who is the Chief Engineer from Devon County, who is with us on throughout the ordeal, and he's got a team of Devon County specialists here who will bring in as and when necessary. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Des, for those words of thanks on behalf of everybody. Say on behalf of Devon County Council, we would like to thank everybody involved, the emergency services, the police, the fire service, and in particular the local community, because it was really quite inspiring to see the way they all rallied around at that particular time. Can I say thank you to Ken for his involvement and guidance at times, and the rest of the members of the parish council, and particularly to Barry Corden, who manned the parish hall here throughout the event and looked after us with tea, biscuits and anything we wanted. It was constantly clearing up behind us. Can I just say something about the weather event and just put it into context, because I think we've all heard the story that we've had a summer of continual rain and major downpours, which has led to the whole area being saturated. So that when you get these storm events, it's not able to be taken into the natural ground, and you've got these flash floods developing. And certainly as far as Devon's been concerned, we've had quite a difficult time since July, since the first set of floods, responding to the problems that's put onto the network in terms of damage to road surfacing. In my own particular case, the bridges and the retaining walls, we've had no end of slips taking place. And in fact, there was just a grade 2 listed bridge was washed away just last week, just not too many miles from here. So this is quite an exceptional event as far as we're concerned. I think it's useful to view the events of what's happened at the canal in that context. Give you a bit of an update of where we are at the moment in terms of the engineering issues. And as you're probably aware, the breach was sealed with heroic efforts from the team within the first couple of days. So we now have the breach section of the canal isolated and the waters either side safely impounded. But what we did end up with was a rather large lake developing on the northern side of the canal, and our estimates that it was something between 50 million litres and 80 million litres of water, which is hard to imagine, but it was a significant lake. And obviously our concerns were that that this water shouldn't be allowed to escape, causing any damage. So we've worked very hard ever since trying to lower those levels, and I think we've probably got 3/4 of the water safely dissipated either back into the canal or through its natural drainage into the surrounding area. So we do have a controlled situation now, and the remaining embankment which is there is safe and stable. We've had a geotechnical engineer come to take a look at that. We've also been monitoring the potential movements of the embankment, and there's no significant signs of any problems with it, which is quite reassuring. The one thing I would say is that there are still sections around the collapse which are subject to minor collapses, particularly of the existing towpath, and that will continue, I think, over the coming weeks. It's something which is probably just too dangerous to go and address at the moment. So we're asking people to keep away from that area and use the viewing facilities which I believe Ken is providing to look at the scene if you want to do that. The County Council will be carrying out an investigation into what's happened here and gathering facts and information to put before our Cabinet in the next few weeks. So we'll have a better understanding of what's happened, what we need to do to take this forward, and decisions about the costs and the funding and where that might come from, or what help we can possibly get will be considered at that time. So I'm not able to give you any definite information on that until we manage to get this report completed. In terms of pure engineering, I've spent quite a bit of time over the past week thinking about what could be done, and the advice we've had from the geotechnical expertise consultants we've engaged is that it would be possible to reconstruct that embankment using the existing material that was there. I think when it was still 200 years ago, they knew what they were doing in terms of the engineering that went into that, and we do believe it could be reconstructed and strengthened, but at a cost. And I think we've got to be talking in terms of several £1 million at least to achieve that. So that's a challenge for all of us, I think. I could perhaps just hand over to one of my colleagues now just to give you a bit more detailed information, if you'd like it, on the monitoring that's going on and what we're planning to do over the next few weeks in terms of managing the water levels in the canal. So I can perhaps ask Kevin Dentith, who's our principal engineer for bridge maintenance, who's been heavily involved and was a bit of a star on during the event as well, to perhaps have a word to update you on those issues.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, I'll keep this brief. As most of you know, if you've been over to the UNA, the pumping is continuing 24 hours a day. It's our intention to try and get the field back to John as soon as we can. The fire brigade had to move out. Their pumps were colossal. They were high volume pumps, and they were taking the canal down at a fairly reasonable rate, the lagoon, but they had to take them away for emergencies. The rain went north. But we're fortunate we've installed a slurry pump there, and again, fortunately, it's from a local supplier. They've been able to access the area far easier than the actual fire brigade did. It was quite difficult for them to get their pumps out, but it's a tractor-mounted unit that's pumping out 200 cubic metres per hour. Our estimate is that it'll take another 5 days to get down to a semi-complete, semi-empty level. That is when we, I imagine the fish rescue will happen. I'm having a meeting tomorrow afternoon with Nick May of the EA, when I plan to go into the lagoon to check the depth of the silt. I was down there this morning taking readings, because we're monitoring each day how much is falling, and it's falling down at an average of 250 millimetres or 10 inches per day. There's actually quite a bit more silt than we imagined, even on the edges. It's about 200 mil deep. We'll know more tomorrow, but at the moment there's a fish rescue plan for Monday where 30 EA staff and volunteers are proposing to go in. I don't expect that to happen based on what I've seen there this morning. But I'll talk to Nick May tomorrow afternoon and he will respond to all of the volunteers. I know there's probably some in the room now, to delay that till later in the week. A lot of people are concerned about the fish in there. Nick has advised me that the majority of the fish are likely to be tench and carp, and they actually don't mind the silt. In fact, during the winter, they will bury themselves in silt and almost go dormant. We haven't seen many fish, except for the early days, dead on the banks. So we're hoping that the majority of them are safe and well in there, even though there's ice over the lake this morning. That's the lagoon at the moment. Monday, I have to say that we're going to do some more works on the stopboards at Rock and Greenway. That's to stabilise these. We've got secondary dams in place, which went in on that Wednesday evening. The stopboards will be taken out, reseated and fixed, so that we have two lines of defence there, as the secondary dams are likely to be there for some months. That will involve a diving team coming in as well. I intend to do an inspection of the base of the stopboards, and it will mean, because we're taking a pump out and some dumpy bags that we put in the initial hours to try and seal the stopboards, they need to come out. So there will be a road closure on Monday. I'm sorry you're being affected again, but we're putting that off until 9:30. After rush hour, it'll be off by 4:30. If we can get off earlier, we will. And I'm fairly hopeful that that'll be the last interruption to the traffic flow that you'll see over this job. And finally, I'd like to thank the community. I've been a civil engineer for 28 years. Bridge maintenance is my occupation. And I've dealt with quite a few emergencies in the past, mainly around bridges. And that night was one of the most stressful in that 28 years. And it was not just I had two contractors there who came in very quickly, managed to organise plant, dumpy bags, and clay. We were very fortunate we had a clay pit, or it's actually a tip, at junction 27 of the M5, which John Luffman was aware of, and that was a subsoil. So it's not clay we put in, it's actually a subsoil with a clay material, and it proved ideal. But despite that, I've got to thank Ken. I can see Peter at the back. I don't know Pete's surname, but they were stalwarts on the night. It was fantastic to have this team. My only regret on the evening was having to go away with the police to decide whether to evacuate the town. And people said, did you enjoy going up with a helicopter and seeing the bridge? No, I didn't. I really wanted to be on that bridge with this team. But we achieved what we had to. And we did stop a catastrophe turn into a disaster. So I really applaud the community for their help on that night. Thank you. Over to Kevin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin, for that. And just to say that, if we hadn't cleared the water, we might have had Loch Halberton as a new feature in the area. Just to say now that the pumps that Kevin mentioned and the removal of them, which I think the price that we were told was £43,000 to airlift them out, that was done with the help of farm staff and our local John Deere tractor agency. Special thanks to Andy for bringing in that big tractor and helping to tow them out. Is there anyone here from TMS, Southwest Highways, or any of the other contractors who'd like to say anything at this stage? Southwest Highways, we've got a representative who lives next door. Would you like to say something at this moment? No? Nothing? Okay. Thank you. So that brings us on now to Neil Parish, our MP, who came last week and had a look, and he's turned up this morning. So if you'd like to have a few words, Neil, and tell us about the amount of funding you're finding for us.
Yeah. So
I stand up here because I'm a bit vertically challenged, so you won't see me otherwise. I think I echo what Ken has said and Des very much. That we are, to coin a phrase, all in this together, and I'm going to look the very best I can to see exactly what funding we can get. I mean, there is a so-called Bellwin agreement between government and local authority, but this kicks in when small percentage of the county budget that's affected by the floods, and I don't know whether we've got there yet. But I think what we've also got to look at is their lottery funds, is all sorts of things. Because naturally the county council are the proud owners of the canal, and I'm sure they're very proud to be owners of it just at the moment. And I understand, their funds are tight, but I think we've got to help everybody get this together, because it is a great asset to Tiverton. And can I, echo again the words that have been said. Whatever the troubles there are in this country, when the chips are down, we get stuck in, don't we? And all of you locally, from farmers to everyone, got stuck in. And on Friday, when I walked along with Ken, to see the massive hole out there and all that weight of water. And of course, don't forget, I'm a farmer. I farm in Somerset. I know about water, and it's a extreme weight. And what is remarkable, of course, is that the canal held underneath. The water was coming through the culvert, but it didn't come through to flood Halberton, and thank goodness for that. So if it had to break, it's a good job it went that way. You may not feel like it who have got the field, but like I said, it is good it's there. So now I think it's very much about, and the engineers and everybody, to put it right. Remarkable to see, so most of you have been there, to see how the canal was built 200 years ago, and the way it's lined and everything else. Fascinating, I think, in itself. So, I'm really keen to get it done, and I think Eric Pickles is right when he says, localism is strong and all the rest of it. But of course, we've got to make sure that we help you be able to do that. But there is a great community here, so I've got every confidence we're going to get this canal done between us. And like I said, whatever funding's about, I can't promise you oceans and oceans of money, but we will get some. We will put it together, and you will all help as well. And of course, not only is it great for us here in Halberton, it's a great tourist attraction, lovely for Tiverton as well. So, I'm really keen to see it happen, and let's all work together. And thank you all again for everything you've done, and thank goodness it didn't come into Halberton, because then it would be, a major problem. And I think perhaps the only thing I would say finally is I think that once we've done this and we've got it back together again, we are, I think, going to have to watch the levels a little more than we did before. And I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it was overtopping for quite a little while, and I think perhaps didn't necessarily see the seriousness of it at the time. That's the only thing I would add at this moment. But like I said, this is not the moment now, I don't think, to go into anything about why it happened or what happened. What we've got to do is put it back together and all work together. So I will do my very best, Ken. Thank you very much, Neil, for those words, encouraging words that there may be some funding becoming available. I'd like now to call on our Village Hall Chairman, Barry Corden. Just come forward, Barry, and just have a few words, because you have oiled the mechanism for all those purposes.
Thank you, Ken. We've been very lucky here in this village. Our forefathers, back in 1918, decided not to build a cross to commemorate all the people that served and fell, but they bought a pub. And this was the Swan Inn, which was a 16th century coaching inn, and they had the wisdom to think that we needed a centre here for the community. And here we are over 90 years later in a great big emergency, and their foresight has been brilliant. I'd also like to thank all my fellow trustees, because we all rallied together. We have an emergency plan in the village. It all kicked in. We were able to keep this building open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, heat and lit. Those that saw it on television saw that the WI were in here. Jerusalem has never been sung better in this hall than it was on that night. I do wish to apologise to some members of the services. Apparently, we have given them an addiction to custard creams. And, we do apologise if their diets are now out of focus. But It's been a privilege to be part of a team that's pulled together. It's been brilliant to see all the fellow villagers, all our councillors, all our county councillors and everybody else all working together for one common purpose. And this building has played part of that, and we're very proud of that. Thank you very much to everybody that helped.
Thank you, Barry. And just to say that our Mid-Devon District Councillor Ray Radford, who's here this morning, I met him on the towpath. He was arranging signs for us in the early days. Do you want to say a few words, Ray?
Of course it does.
Well, no, I mean, I just echo what everybody else has said, really, that thank the community for, jumping into action so quick as they did. I mean, Ken and the local farmers must have been great doing this job. I think now the issue is that we've got to get this canal back, and from my point of view, being a county councillor as well, who is responsible for the other half of the canal. Fortunately, my bit didn't collapse, but there we are. But at the end of the day, I'm a county councillor, as well as I see Polly here somewhere, Polly Coulthorpe, who's also a county councillor, and we shall make sure that this happens. I think we will have a bit of influence with the cabinet down at Exeter, and we should be putting all we can to get this back in as quick as we possibly can. It's a great asset to the community, something we can't do without, or we won't do without. And I'm seeing Neil there nodding his head. I'm sure he's going to get some funding from the government, which we will need. Did I hear 7 million mentioned just now? No, okay. But it's going to be millions. It's going to be millions of pounds, and something probably which county probably haven't got, certainly not budgeted for. So they will have to deep in their coppers, and I'm sure with my fellow county councillors, we will do all we can to get this job underway, completed. So. Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you, Ray. Now I'd like to invite Rob up from, he's a director of the Met Office and lives here in our community. Rob, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Well, usually when the weather's a bit ropey, I get the blame. I'm not sure I'm going to take the entire blame for the canal today, but you can certainly say the weather's been pretty rubbish over the last few months. We heard that earlier on, and since about April it seems like it's hardly stopped raining, and the rain that we've had over the last few days really hasn't been extreme. It hasn't been record breaking, but the thing that's been different this year is that the rain has just kept coming. Ever since the beginning of April we've had one wet spell after another, and it's that cumulative effect that has lifted the water tables and made everywhere saturated. And one of the things that was particularly notable about the floods in different parts of the country over the last week is the number of incidents of landslip and banks of roads, banks of railways, big areas of hillsides have slipped down, and that just illustrates the impact of rain over multiple months. So if we look back in a sort of longer period, look back over the last 50 or 100 years, we all have, in some senses, quite a short memory of the weather, and we look at what's going on and think, this is amazing, I've never seen it as bad as this. But the reality is that we've had very wet spells, we've had severe floods in the past, and the weather kind of goes in cycles. So you get years and years when it's pretty dry, and then suddenly you get a few years when it's very wet, and you get floods, and it goes dry again, and it goes wet again. Some years are very warm and dry, some years are cold and wet. In fact, since about the end of 2006, the weather's been playing some funny games. Most of the summers since 2006 have been a bit disappointing. Go back to 2007, there were massive floods, way more than we've had this year. If some of you might recall that the pit review was commissioned after the 2007 flood, so that the government could learn lessons and understood what had happened and make sure that communities were able to respond better. So all over the country there are plans in place, as we've heard mentioned here, so that if bad stuff happens, people can spring into action quickly and get stuff done. One of the things that the pit review also commissioned was a scientific review to understand what was happening to the weather. And the conclusion of the pit review report on the weather was that the gradual change of climate over decades was just little by little making severe floods that bit more likely to happen. I won't give you a long physics lesson, but some very simple physics says that if the air is warmer, it can hold more water, which means that when you squeeze the water out of the air, there's more of it, and you get more rain on the ground. So what we've seen progressively over the last few decades is that when there's severe rain falling, the total amounts of rain we measure are just, a slight, tiny proportion bigger than they have been in the past. Which it means that instead of the rivers being full, they begin to overtop. And instead of the canal being able to hold the water as it falls off the fields, it gets to the top of the bank and ultimately to the situation we've seen here. So as we look ahead, we're going to design this canal for another 200 years, right? So as we do that, we need to make sure that the canal is able to take not just the amount of water that we've seen here over the last 10 months, but the amount of water we're going to see the next time Halberton has a really wet spell. Because the next time it might be that bit wetter, and in 20 years or 50 years or 80 years from now, when we have another April to November wet period, it could just be 10% or 20% more than it is now. So we're going to make sure that we're designed for that, and that way the canal will stay for at least another 200 years. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you very much. That was Rob Varley, who lives here in the village and who was really helpful during the incident to tell us exactly what the weather was going to be and how we were going to have a bit of dry period that we had during this week. So thank you very much, Rob. I'll hand now back again to Nick, who'll bring in the Ranger Service, and Peter to tell us a little bit more about the ongoing work of what they're doing now. Thank you.
Yes, I thought it might be interesting to look at the wider picture in Devon and what's being done about the flood recovery in general. And we've got Peter Chamberlain here, who is heading that particular subject up for Devon at the moment. So, Peter, if you could just give us a bit of background to that.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, if you'll excuse me, if I just take a minute to look at that broader context, so just taking the focus away from the canal for a second. I'm here today to represent a multi-agency group that has been established to coordinate the ongoing process of recovery that needs to take place across Devon following last week's events. The role of that group is to really look at the overall social, the environmental and the economic consequences of the widespread impacts from the weather last week and the associated flooding. So I'm sure from the media you will have heard about the impacts that have been experienced right around Devon, and it really is right around. So just as headlines, the best picture we have at the moment is that there were in excess of 350 properties, that's both residential and commercial premises, which suffered internal flooding around Devon. Whilst that looks to be the figure, my guess is that's an underestimate, because as you can probably understand, people are very reluctant to come forward and actually say when they've been flooded. But it is also just really difficult to coordinate that sort of picture when it's been so widespread across Devon. As you will have also heard, there has been very, very significant damage and disruption to transport infrastructure. So you were listening to the Radio Devon News this morning, you will have heard that just this morning they've got the railway line back open again down towards Newton Abbot. There's been a massive task in dealing with that immediate response. Not just the railways though, we have one of the largest highway networks in the country, and there have been huge impacts upon that. But one of the first tasks is just to even get round it and see quite how severe the damage has been. So our highway colleagues were hoping by yesterday to have completed the first set of reconnaissance visits across the entire network to assess the extent of damage. But as Nick pointed out earlier on, it is obvious there is going to be severe damage that needs to be put right at various locations around the network, including the complete rebuilding of bridges that have been damaged and a variety of other structures. So I mean that just gives the overall context in terms of the ultimate bill for that. I can't give you a figure because we haven't got that calculated as yet, but it will be in the multi-million-pound bracket. As part of the, well, I suppose it's one of the first steps of that recovery process, we have to ensure that we do gather the information about what has taken place. And in relation to the flood-hit communities, the way in which we're handling that is to organise a series of drop-in events, or what sometimes called flood surgery events, in the locations where the communities were hardest hit. So over the next few weeks around Devon, I hope you'll hear in the media that there are events taking place where we're encouraging the community to come in, give us their experience, tell us what actually happened, because actually we need to have that detail. We need to know what actually went on, because until we can properly understand what happened, we can't then look at the options for properly addressing that. So those events will start taking place as from Monday. The first one is taking place in Benetton. Now really that same process, just to bring it back to the canal, does need to happen here for the Grand Western Canal, and as you've heard, that process of information gathering is already well underway. But I just wanted to emphasise that it is really important that through that process we do gather the direct personal experiences of all those who were involved, who saw what happened, were there, and can actually sort of give a factual basis to that investigation process. So, I mean, one idea that I just wanted to leave you with this morning is if the community would find it helpful, if the parish council would like to do so, we would be very happy to arrange a similar drop-in event in order to help that information gathering, if you think that would be useful. It's only one of the ways in which that can be done, and if you would prefer it just for us to explore other options for that rather than holding events, then we'll be guided by you. But we are very keen to collect the information that you will have. That was really all I wanted to say. Mark, can I hand over to you?
Thanks, Peter. On behalf of the Canal Ranger Service, firstly, I'd just like to say that obviously we're devastated by what's happened, but I'm very proud of how we reacted on the day and in the days following. And I'd like to echo the thanks that have been offered by others, far better than I can probably put it, already. Without everybody's help, it could have been a far worse disaster. So thanks again to everybody who was involved in the days immediately, on the day it happened and the days afterwards. Just to update you on what the Canal Ranger Service is doing at the moment and in the next few weeks. Obviously public safety is very important, so we're monitoring the fencing and the signage around the site to make sure that people can't put themselves at risk. If anybody sees any issues with the signage or with the fencing, if it needs repairing, then please let us know and we'll get on that. We're obviously keeping a very close eye on the water levels on either side and adjusting the sluices accordingly because there are variations in terms of the amount of water that's being pumped out. We're also conscious that at the Tiverton end, our ability to control the levels there is reduced. We don't have access to the sluice at Bolescombe anymore, and so as a result we're keeping the water levels particularly low at the moment, and you should notice that the levels are a good 10-12 centimetres lower than you'd normally see them. That's to give us some buffer if we do get more adverse weather coming through. And at the moment we've got engineers working on designs to give us more capacity to let water out at the Tiverton end. Hopefully within a week or two that'll be in place. So we should be able to get through the winter. Our focus will also turn on keeping water levels up at the Tiverton end. In the summer we're reliant on spring water from the northern end of the canal to keep levels up. We've lost that capacity now, so obviously it's important that we keep the levels up in the Tiverton end so the horse-drawn barge can keep running and the canal can still be used. So obviously we're aware of that issue and we'll be working with our engineers to come up with a solution for that. We've got a towpath diversion in between Batten's Bridge and Greenway Bridge at the moment. So anybody who's wanting to get along the towpath can find a route which doesn't take them past the busy bend just below Rock Bridge. I think next week we're likely to reopen the towpath between Greenway and Swing Bridge. I don't think there's any need for that to be cordoned off anymore, and so that will reduce the length of that diversion so people won't have to go all the way through the village. One other thing we're likely to do next week is to take out the stop boards at Tiverton Road Bridge. I think we're happy that they're no longer needed, and that will enable boats to use a longer stretch. We'll be updating people through our regular bulletins, the Rangers Rag and other newsletters, keeping people aware of what's happening. And we'll start to move back towards our usual winter tasks as much as we can. But I should just say that we are fully committed to the reconstruction, and we'll be doing everything we can to support that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And now we move on to Friends of the Canal. We've got Robert Hodgson here, who's the chairman, and he's going to tell us about what they've done to set up the Just Giving website. And I guess Robert will also bring in Phil from the Tiverton Horseboat Company and Des as necessary to tell you about the happenings there. So over to you, Robert. Thank you. And again, he's already a radio star. He's been on the radio this morning already. So
well done, Rob. Thank you, Ken. Good morning, everybody. We've heard from many viewpoints about the disaster of the last week and all the events that have happened since then and what needs to happen now to sort it out. And I'd like to start by echoing the tributes that have been paid this morning to all the people who worked so hard in the last week to make sure it didn't get worse than it was. We've heard from representatives of a number of different organisations. I'd like to say that we're all friends of this canal. I don't think I represent anyone in particular. I think I represent all of us, at least I hope I do. I don't think you'd be here if you weren't friends of the canal. And believe me, the canal needs its friends at the moment. Over the last week, Phil and I have been receiving calls and emails and all sorts of offers of help. So we know there are a lot of friends out there who want to do things to help put right what's gone wrong. We've had offers of technical support, people who can help put together grants. We've had people who want to do all sorts of things. And we've started getting cheques in the post already, completely unsolicited. So we know there's a great will to sort this out. At the moment we're collating these offers and we need to talk, I think, with Devon County as to how to put them to use, because there's a great deal we can do between us. We have, within the community, as we've already heard, a number of very useful skills that could help sort this out at no or little cost. We can all play our part. I've heard Des say several times on air lately, this community can do things for itself and the Friends are part of that. The one thing I'm here to tell you about today is the rescue fund that we've set up because this problem will need money. We've heard various estimates from 1.5 million that I think I said the other day, up to 7 million, but that could have been a misunderstanding. It's somewhere in that range, and nobody really knows what yet. But the Trent and Mersey had a very similar failure a couple of months ago, and they're budgeting $1.5 million, and their embankment was nothing like as high as this one, and so we are looking at more than that. And if we're going to go down the road of really sorting things out so it can't happen again, we'll be looking at putting back more than was there, and that's going to take extra money too. So what we want to kickstart here is the community showing that it can do things for itself, and even a few shillings in our coffer will help get things going so that when we go to people like the National Lottery or any of the other big grant makers, we can show we have support from the community. It's easy for people to put their hands in the air and say, yes, we think that's a good idea. We've had years and years and years as the Friends of people doing that, but this is the moment when we actually have to prove it. So we have ways you can give us some money. You can either send us a cheque, details on the website, or what we have just set up, and it went live literally half an hour ago before I came down here, was a Just Giving site, which you can access through our website, which is www.friendsroundwesterncanal.org.uk. And on that you will find a button that looks like this. And if you click on that, you go straight to the Just Giving site, which still needs a bit of tinkering with. I'm afraid we're all learning at the moment how to do these things. but the system is there that you can give us as much or as little as you can afford, and it will also record that you've done it, so we know how many people are supporting and all these other statistics we will need when we come to the big funds. Trent and Mersey, or the Canal and River Trust, I think actually set it up, have done a similar thing for their embankment, and they've raised £14,500 since the beginning of October, so that gives us some kind of a target, at least for by Christmas. I think Des is going to demonstrate how to do this.
He's in front of the screen.
I'm standing in front of it on purpose, near there.
Because if we have the technology, the Wi-Fi should enable us to demonstrate.
Just leave it like that.
No, right.
Well, this is what we've got at the moment.
Do you want to talk next, or Phil?
Yeah, you can.
As you can see, what we've really spent all our time on is slick presentation. There's no need for this to be slick, it's actually dead simple. I think distributed around the room there are postal addresses and things where you can find out where to send checks. So that's, for the analogue amongst us, that's pretty easy. It's also really, really easy for those of us who use the internet. I'm delighted that the Friends have been able to set up a Just Giving site so quickly. Those of us of a certain age will be used to all sorts of people towing canal boats, cycling over big hills and raising money for things in all sorts of interesting ways. This website makes that incredibly easy. The details are here. Really, you're going to see this donate button on other people's websites. That's part of the idea of this. So I would very much like to think that the County Council might have this donate button on its website, and hopefully by saying that on this platform, I have just made it so. I'd also like to think that we'll see it on the District Council's website. I'm seeing nodding, which I'm getting particularly quickly in front of a large audience. I'm delighted, that's wonderful. I think we'll see it on the Parish Council's website. And I think we'll see it in a lot of other places like the Town Council's website. And if I could see the Mayor, Councillor Lindis, who's down there, you've stuck your hand in the air, that means yes, doesn't it? Excellent. So we've done our little bit of, we've sorted that there.
It might appear on mine as well.
I do believe that our MP is now going to have it on his website too. Oh, I do love it when a plan comes together. Okay, so essentially all you have to do is go to the Just Giving website, click on the button, and it'll tell you how to do it. That's how simple it is. The web address will be floating around here. It's very straightforward. Also, if you go to the Friends of the Grand Western Canal website, basically type in Grand Western Canal into Google and you'll be able to find your way to this. So it's going to be very easy to give money. I'll stop waffling now because that's the technicalities. What I will say is, you may remember, well, some of us remember, quite some years ago, I was involved in selling an airport for the council. We sold it off and we've reinvested the money. Almost all of the money has now been reinvested in things, including the Canal Visitor Centre that's down at the basin. Well, I've got 10 grand left that I have some control over. I haven't had proper approval for this yet, but I'm going to put the 10 grand into this fund. And hopefully, because I said it in front of people with cameras and a big room full of people, no one can tell me no now. There are pots of money for this kind of thing, and I think by us showing willing, I'd call this pump priming, but that would be a very, very bad joke. By us showing willing, it will make it easier for the County Council, who are in the end going to do the heavy lifting on the money for this. Make it easier for them to get money from other sources. I mean, it'll be quite easy to encourage our MP to get national money. It'll be quite easy to encourage a little bit of money out of maybe our district council. A bit of money, I know the town council are already talking about it in Tiverton. I'm sure that some money will be found in Halberton, and I think lots of us private individuals will also do it. I mean, I will put some money from my own pocket in this as well, but that's not a matter for public record, that's a matter for all of you. I'd like to think that everybody here will do that. Because we all use this canal. If you're in this room, you care about it. So please give generously and think about the future. 198 years now, 200 years in 2 years' time, that's when we want this fixed. So I'll leave you with the strap line. Canal rescue, the canal fights back. Anybody who remembers Star Wars should recognise that one.
Thank you, Des. Liz, for that encouragement. And to say I understand on this website that if you are fortunate enough to be a taxpayer, the government will put their bit in as well. So there we go. Over now to Phil, who runs the Tiverton Canal Company. Thank you, Phil.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I don't really deserve to be here with all these VIPs around me, but I do have to be here, and the reason is because I feel I'm representing not just some of you in the room, but also the rest of the country. It's no mistake that the Canal, that is, won the BBC Countryfile competition. That Countryfile calendar across the nation has actually now raised £1.234 million for children in need. And everyone that's actually purchased one of those calendars knows about the Grand Western Canal. I can't tell you the number of calls I've had across the country of sympathy, of actually asking how they can help. I've just had so much reaction, literally from across the, and when I say across the country, I don't just mean this country, by the way. I'm talking Australia, Canada. This actually crosses the boundaries of our country even. That's how much our canal is loved, and I know it's a passionate love as far as you are concerned. The canal has touched our lives in many, many ways. I'm often told of stories about how the canal is appreciated by everybody. Some, it's taking the dog for a walk. Some, it's actually, they had their first kiss on the canal. Maybe not you or me, but for some people it is. It has a real passion for everybody, and it touches everyone's hearts. And when this disaster happened, I went on national TV to say that I felt, it felt to me like a death in the family, and I know it felt like a death in the family to lots of you. It was very upsetting indeed. I don't want to whittle on, but what I do want to say is that I'm so pleased with all the VIPs and county councillors in the room here today that this disaster is being taken very seriously indeed. Indeed, the attention and the media attention across the country is fantastic, because it means to say now that we've got the resources to actually do something about the canal for the future. Yes, I know today the disaster is about too much water in the canal, but I also want to remind everybody, including the councillors here today, that there are also problems with the long-term life of the canal for a lack of water as well. And that seems a rather silly thing to say in a meeting like this. But we need to take the canal very seriously if we're going to make it survive for the next 200 years. We need to look at the hydrology of the canal. We need to look at the maintenance of the canal. Don't you just hate it when that happens?
Phil, that's an extra 50 quid for me.
It's the county council calling me councillor.
And we need to look at the hydrology of the canal, we need to look at the maintenance of the canal, we need to look at the investment of the canal. And I think I've gone on radio to say that we need to run this canal as a canal. We must remember this is not a river. This isn't the River Exe. This is a managed waterway. And without that management, we don't have a canal. I also want to say, and I've had a lot of letters at home, and a lot of input on the emails at home, for me to give the councillors and Devon County councillors a message today. And that is, we don't have an option not to go ahead and repair it. And the reason for that is because, as my colleague Mark has just mentioned to you, the water comes from the other end of the canal. If this repair isn't done, it would, in my opinion, be simply unsustainable to keep the Tiverton end alive. So we have to go ahead with this repair for the good of the canal and for the good of our community. And that's really the message from the people that have written to me and been on the phone to me. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say, please do keep in touch on the Facebook. If any of you are on Facebook, come in on the Facebook, just type in Grand Western Canal and you'll come straight to us. There's a terrific community now, nearly 300 odd people on there already, talking about this disaster and what we can do and everything else. And also do please get in touch with Robert and get on and join the Friends group, be a part of it. And indeed, use the donate button. Click that donate button. Thank you so much for being here today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, for that. And I think Phil was also going to mention about the Towpath Talk magazines, which he's brought along a great bundle of for anyone to take along with them.
Indeed, please do,
And
yes.
I think there's going to be an article in the next magazine, isn't
There
it?
will indeed, yes.
There will be in
And it's
the
online.
next issue and online, so look up Towpath Talk. That brings us nearly to the end of our meeting this morning. We've had a very comprehensive account of all that's gone on, and we'd like to thank all those officials, VIPs who've turned up today in their own time. Guests would have better things to do on a Saturday in December. We'd like to thank them very, very much for coming and showing commitment to us here this morning. And we have got a little bit of time. If there are any questions about how we move forward, anything to do with that this morning, it's not an inquiry into what's gone on, it's a way of looking forward that we want. Pete, would you like to tell us what your question is?
Pete Bradham, farmer. I might not let us behind my name and qualifications, but I got common sense.
Hang on a second.
Hang on.
You just put, we'll get your money if you can't quite hear.
That's all loud enough. Go to the Devon County chap who said about floods and we need to have reviews and all that. I read a bit the other day. There's 80% of the rivers in the country need maintenance. That's up to the Environment Agency. They let the rivers overgrow, and no ditches are done anymore on lanes, and that's up to Devon County and South West Highways. So if they spent more money on maintenance of rivers and ditches, etc., our houses won't get flooded. And I'd like to say, if it wasn't for Ken and Dave Browse, Mike Britton, Kevin that's up there as well, and Gavin in the marine team, this would have been an absolute shambles. Because when I was up at the bridge that day helping, there was us down in the canal, and Kevin was drop overseeing, and there was about 25, 30 chaps in reflective jackets, all stood at the top, looking down, doing nothing. Not one of them come down and said, do you want a hand? No, they didn't want to get their hands dirty. No, and that's just another thing. Also, you say about repairing it, but what's going to stop it happening again? The canal is water levels are kept. You can regulate the level of the canal. So yes, we've had a lot of rain. Well, why not open up the sluice gates, etc., and let the level down? And this would never have happened. And also on Thursday, the next day after it happened, at Batten's Bridge, where there's an outlet, the water can go out, they were up there clearing that out to let the water out. It's a bit late then.
Okay, Pete, okay.
So I'm just, yeah, but it's no good, is there?
Thanks,
And also, if everybody would like to know, there's a stream that's been diverted into the canal at West Lee that flows like a river into the canal, and that's what's keeping the level up.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, there will be an inquiry. Thank you for those votes. We do know the feelings that are here, but today we are moving forward. We're trying to keep positive. I don't know if Des wanted to say anything on that. Thank you.
I fully identify with what Pete's saying in some of it, but I think there is something very important to remember here. We heard from the Met Office how much rain we've had here. We had floods and collapses all over this county on the same day. One of the reasons it was quite hard to get the 999 out was because they were all over the place. This didn't just happen here. The overtopping is a result of a lot of things. Now, no one will have done the perfect thing on the 24 hours before this. We know that, because the perfect thing is not in the hands of any one individual. This system was set up 198 years ago, before most of Tiverton, the bits that are around the Canal, were built. What you said about a drainage ditch, I know about that, and I oversaw, well, shall we say I informally oversaw a load of rubble going into that ditch the next day. Now, you can't always do that legally, but on this occasion we felt we had a little bit of weight behind our arm because we'd had a problem. There are lots of things going on here. For example, in Tiverton, if you look at Newts Hill, We have a whole area of the town that's been built in such a way that all the water drains into the canal. That was done in the time, in the 60s, when the canal was frankly considered to be a nice big hole in the ground. It was a handy place to put a lot of water. The systems designed to look after the canal and control it are 198 years old. The water that's coming in is coming in an entirely different way from the way that that was designed for, and it is not sensible or easy to manage it based on the way that it is now. This is something that we've really learned. I mean, the JAC, the Joint Advisory Committee, that is the stakeholders group that manages this canal, well, we don't manage this canal, but we oversee the management of the canal on behalf of the dog walkers and the cyclists and the canal boat people and the anglers. We've been talking about getting a hydrology survey on this canal for particularly the last year because we've seen that this is getting really hard to manage. Now, we can either say we can either fiddle around the edges and talk about the detaily bits, or we can say that part of rebuilding this is to get a full set of modern controls that are capable of dealing with the conditions we face now. Those conditions are different. Crucifying an individual or a group of individuals over this is just nonsense, frankly. It's missing the point. The point here is things have changed. The canal has told us in no uncertain terms that things have changed by this overtopping. And I think turning this into a blame game is frankly missing the point. I saw Pete working down there on that night. There were a lot of people in high-vis jackets. I was one of those people. I was trying to communicate with people and try and get everybody to the point where they were working together as a team. Because we had lots of people who were passionate about what they were trying to do. And they were all running about doing their very best at the thing they were doing. And this is the story of what happened on that day. That'll be looked into in detail. Everyone will have what their contribution looked at and worked on, and we'll work out how we would do this better should it happen again. But the whole point is for it not to happen again. And if we concentrate on blaming people, individuals for this, we're not dealing with the point. The point is this canal needs some serious re-engineering as well as a new embankment, and we'll get that on the back of this very, very photogenic disaster. If you wanted to have a disaster, have one where you've got a picture that explains what's happened. We have pictures of a big hole in an embankment, and we will get the money, I think, as a result, to do this properly.
I just wanted to comment on what Pete said, because you've raised what is one of my pet subjects, and that is that we are not dredging the rivers properly, we're not keeping them open. I've been raising this in Parliament. Now, the Environment Agency is going to do a sort of total review after this, not just what's happened here, what's happened across the country. So any evidence that you've got, give it to me and I will take it, because there are sluice gates there, and that's the whole idea. And don't forget, I've lived with water all my life. The whole idea of sluice gates is to lower the levels, and what's happened in many years is we've got fewer people out there actually managing those sluice gates. So perhaps we do it electronically from now on in. So there are lessons to be learned. It's not today, I don't think, and I agree with Des Hammond, it's not the blame game, but what we must do is actually learn, because we can actually control the level of the water in that canal relatively easily, and that is what we will have to do in the future, not only repair it. So I think, what we've got today is a great way forward, because people are very positive, and I think we are all positive about getting it right. But I think we also need to learn those lessons, and that's what the Environment Agency and the County Council and everybody will be looking at, because we can manage the water better, and we'll have to in the future if we're going to stop this happening.
Thank you, Neil. I've time for a couple more questions. Anyone like to get another question?
We've got a mic. Have we got a mic?
Got a mic down there somewhere?
Why has it taken a disaster like this to focus on the lack of appropriate management of the canal?
We aren't going into what's happened, we're looking forward today. That's different for the inquiry. They say they're setting up. So Barry, you can come in on that when that comes.
Is there a forum then for expressing these points?
Pardon?
Is there an appropriate forum for expressing these points?
Yes, they're setting this inquiry, and they're talking about having something here in this village. So we'll let you know when that is. Okay, thank you, Barry. Anybody else who'd like to ask another question? Perhaps Ray, would you like to? You want to ask one?
I was just going to take up the point that Des said, the fund rescue or rescue fund, which is the way you put it. We as county councillors do have a certain amount of money to set aside for local communities. Des has said he's going to put some money into the fund. I'm but the money that we get has to go into the local community that you represent. Well, I represent from Sanford Pebble upwards, but I will put in some of my money, because the canal does run on my patch as well. I will put in some of my money as well. And Polly, I know, is the west end of Tiverton. The canal doesn't run in her ward, but what I will say, and I said it just now, we will, and I've already been in contact with John Hart, John Clapworthy, Roger Crowe, who are the cabinet members at that county who've got hands on the money, and I will make sure, and as we all county councillors will, we will make sure that they do dig deep into their pockets, because this is something that's got to be repaired, and we will live or die on getting this done. So, but from my point of view, I will put some of my locality money into the fund. Goodbye.
Thank you very much for that, Ray. And the drop-in event that Devon County are talking about organising, as well as Halberton, I guess Ray will see that that happens in Sanford Peveril as well, and I don't say upstream, but north from here on the canal, so that you all have a chance to put your penneth worth in. And I'd just like to once again apologise to a lot of people that I've not responded to text, I've not responded to emails and the Axophone messages as I should, because if you know anything about my phone, when we were down there, I actually lost my glasses for 2 days. They turned up when I did an emergency stop with a teleander. They shot out under my feet from under the seat, so then I could see again. But it's things like this. The emergency we were in, we worked our socks off to contain and to limit the damage. We've done that. We are where we are now, and we're going to go forward. And I think that's agreed by everyone here today. And this is the message we want to get out to the county and to the country, that we're going to rebuild this. And with that in mind, I'd like to thank everybody for turning up this morning, for being positive, and to say that after this event now, we'll be moving up to Greenway, to the viewing area. There's the car park just over the canal, just up the road here, and then we'll walk across the field so you all have a chance to have a look at the actual place where this is all taking place. So thank you one and all, and the press, for turning up. Phil, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just before we close here today, I would like to say something here which a lot of you may or may not know, and that is that on this disaster day, it was actually Ken's birthday. And I want you to join with me, because he didn't have a birthday on that day, so I'd like you to all join with me and sing happy birthday. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3! Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ken. Happy birthday to you. Come back, Ken. He's most definitely our hero of the hour.
Can I just say something? I had bought Ken, because he is my husband.
Really?
Yeah. I had bought him a birthday cake. When John and Barbara and Stephen were evacuated to us that night, and they hadn't eaten a lot, we found some cheese and biscuits, and then John said, "Have you got something sweet?" And then he said, "I'll have a piece of that cake." So actually Ken's birthday cake got eaten before he even saw it. A couple of things to add. I'm really, really grateful to the television for allowing me to see my husband over the past few days. And I also, and he only saw this I think yesterday, have as yet fairly unseen footage taken on my phone from the towpath side as it actually happened. And I guess I should sell the rights to see, open to offers for that footage, or you can donate and I'll let you see it.
Well said, Mrs. Price. So, Ken, from your community that loves you dearly and from this disaster committee, wrapped in towpath is some God's juice to say thank you and happy birthday.
Thank you very much, everyone. We're in it together, and we've got to go forward. Thank you.
Yeah,
see Spotlight Chapel. No, that's ITV over
Who's
there.
the person to speak to? You would be the best person to speak to.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, I would speak to somebody who could sort of tell us a bit about
So many months. 2 or 3 months. Are you coming up to see the view in here?
Yeah, what's happening now?
We're going up there now to show the view in there. I'll be hanging on up there because ITV will see me as well. Yeah,
Okay. How far is it from here?
It's only about 600 yards, 700 yards. Yeah. It's a bit.
No, I've never got them back, but I leave them there. Not that they're that valuable, but somebody will nick them.
I've got those photographs up on my computer, right?
What sort of things now, after the meeting, do you think Mid-Devon District Council can do to help here?
Well, we've learnt an awful lot about it. Obviously, it's an absolute catastrophe for Halberton, and we'll look on and see what we can do to help. So obviously, we'd like to help.
How have you been following what's been happening here at the canal? Have you gone up and seen it? What is your reaction to the community spirit and what has happened?
Well, the community reacted very, very positively, and today was a tremendous example of how touched the community are by the help that they've had. Certainly a lot of people did an awful lot of work controlling it and dealing with it on the day that it happened. We've got to now take the thing forward, ensure that the canal is actually repaired.
Okay, thanks very much.
So you're for where?
Pardon?
And you're for where then?
We are actually...
And it's something that's unique to the Southwest. There's only films left lovely to see. I will take I'll do that. No problem at all. Okay. All right. Anything I can do is to help. All you've got to do is time into the canal. All right. Then come straight to this. So if there's anything I can do,
It's lovely to see everybody here today.
yes.
Good morning, Neil. Good morning. Very well, thank you.
People using it for business, they're growing lilies in it.
You can begin to see the old man.
It'd be great for the holiday trade if it was if it had actually been hooked up, because then you could have had could have had holiday boats coming right the way down here. Yeah, I mean, because the Taunton and Bridge was shame we didn't link it up to that one. No. Years ago, I read an article where they said it cost £60 million to link the two up, and that was many years ago, you know. So I don't think that's anything like that's.
We were saying at the meeting this morning that there was a smaller one up on the Mersey Trent Canal, and they cost £1.5 million to repair.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Oh yeah, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Well, the problem here, the other problem, the bridge builders. The road is nearer that way. The road is nearer that way than it is that way. No, that's what we'll do. I think, I honestly think, this is my way how much is another story?
Yeah, well, everything now.
Look, when I came on Thursday, that was up there. So look, you can take all that stuff, tarp and tent and frame. I didn't realise it was like that. They're looking at 5 acres of grass frames that they've got. And this was one of the through. You can see the tide line.
such an amazing result. I mean, the minimum we would expect would have been something in some way the canal would have funded.
Something that big
They won't take them all. It's just type in Grand Western on Facebook and it comes straight to and they had it on there. Yes, that's what's nice about it. Is it actually visible publicly? It's visible publicly. It's an open page. But if you want to contribute, you just I noticed some of the Yes, they can see everything on it, and they don't have to even be a member. They can see everything.
I don't feel better.